Take a breath with me. In through your nose, slow and easy. Hold for a comfortable beat, and let it drift out again, like mist leaving the surface of a quiet lake. Nothing needs to happen quickly here. Tonight is unhurried. Tonight is soft. You are on the edge of a little town tucked between tall, kindly trees. The last streaks of sunset have already faded into a velvet blue, and the pines are whispering the same old bedtime stories they've told for 100 summers. Lanterns hum to life on porches. A radio murmurs somewhere through a screen door. Crickets stitch a steady rhythm into the dark. You can feel the world exhale. This is Gravity Falls, a place where the ordinary and the quietly impossible share the same porch swing, where a fallen pine cone might be only a pine cone, or a tiny map if you turn it the right way, where a puddle reflects the sky, and sometimes a little more than the sky. But in our story, nothing chases, nothing startles. Every odd thing is just another friendly neighbor, waving from the shadows, content to let you pass. If your shoulders are holding the day, you can set it down now. Let your face loosen. Let your jaw rest. Let your breath slow to what feels natural. With each breath, you arrive more gently. The gravel road beneath your shoes is familiar, even if you've never walked it. It leads past a fence that leans like a sleepy dog, past a mailbox with a dent shaped like a smile, past the porch with a rocking chair that rocks exactly as much as you'd like it to and no more. Listen, the town is not asleep yet, but it is close. The diner stacks chairs on tables with the quiet respect of a library. The clock in the square ticks in a way that feels kind, not demanding. The wind moves through the needles and makes the softest hush, as if the forest itself were placing a finger to its lips. Somewhere the lake folds itself up like a blanket, one little wave at a time. We won't rush. We won't raise our voices. We will simply look around together and let the stories come when they want to. If a mystery appears, it will bow politely. If a memory arrives, it will sit by your feet and wait to be noticed. And if sleep comes, that's fine too. You don't have to hold on to every word. The pines will keep the story for you. They always do. Another breath, in and out. Tonight we're beginning at the very beginning, the part of Gravity Falls that existed before signs were posted, before roads were drawn, before anyone tried to make sense of anything at all. We'll listen to the valley as it was, then watch the first lights of home appear one by one. We'll follow those lights until they become a town with a soft heartbeat and a habit of keeping secrets that somehow make you feel safer, not scared. You can close your eyes if you like, or keep them open and count the lanterns in the windows. Either way, you are here. You are welcome, and the night is kind. Let's walk. Before someone called it Gravity Falls, it was only a fold in the world where things like to rest. Hills curled gently together like sleeping cats. A river braided itself through ferns and stones, never quite the same path twice, but always patient, always certain it would find the lake. Even the stars seemed to lean down closer here, the way adults bend toward a child to hear every word. No footsteps yet. No chimneys. Just a chorus of small lives with no names. Moths lifting from bark like bits of moon. Salamanders with drowsy eyes. Deer that did not startle, only blinked. The wind traveled on long routes and came through this valley like a traveler who had finally found a bed for the night. It would lay down its stories among the needles, and the needles would keep them. Little green librarians, happy to listen. Sometimes in the early dark, clouds would gather with their own hush, thicker than fog but gentler than rain. The trees called it the second twilight, The lake called it pajamas. The stones, being stones, simply wore it. Even the soil remembered. If you pressed your palm to the earth long enough, the ground seemed to press back as if to say, I am here. You can lean. There were oddities, yes. Not the kind that leap from behind a stump and shout boo. These oddities were the slow kind. The kind you notice only when you are unhurried. A ring of mushrooms that grew in a perfect circle, and every year the circle shifted a little to the left, like it was scooting over to make room for something else. A patch of moss that stayed emerald even in the deep of summer, soft as a whisper, warm when everything else was cool. A boulder with a pale vein of quartz running through it like a river frozen mid-laugh. If you tapped it with a stick, it answered with a bell-like note, the exact tone that makes your shoulders drop. Birds held meetings in the high branches. They did not vote, but they arrived at agreements, simple ones. Sunrise will be greeted. The hawk will be given room. The fledgling who lost his way will be guided back, and no one will mention the detour again. At night, when the owls took up their posts, the forest changed keys and the lullaby deepened. There were nights when the sky opened wide with stars, too many to count without getting sleepy. And on those nights, if you looked down into the still lake, the stars looked up at you from beneath the water. Not a trick exactly, more like a courtesy. The lake knew you might be too tired to tilt your head back, so it mirrored the sky in its gentle basin and said, Here, look. The world is large and calm, and you are small and calm inside it. If the valley had a language, it was patience. The tall trunks learned to listen with their whole bodies. The river spoke slowly, syllables of pebble and reed. Even the wind practiced, coming in as a breeze, leaving as a sigh, returning after a while with a story it had thought of on the way. The valley did not hurry itself into a point. It spread out like a blanket and said, There is room. And then when the time was right, no clock but a feeling, the first footprints arrived. Not to conquer, not to startle, just to ask a question and take off heavy boots. The valley, good host that it was, lifted its head, smoothed the grass, and made the newcomers a space by the fire that had existed before there were matches. Still, for a breath longer, let's linger in the before. Hear how the crickets pause between their notes, and how even the pause is a kind of music. See how the moon lays a silver ribbon down the river and ties it neatly at the lake. Smell damp bark, clean water, a hint of pine that's somehow both sharp and soft. The land was ready to be a story. It only needed someone to listen. Another slow breath. In, out. The river keeps braiding. The stars keep leaning. And somewhere just beyond the last trees, a lantern will soon be lit. They came in twos and threes, not a parade, but a handful of lanterns bobbing through the dark like sleepy fireflies. Each lantern carried a different wish, but all the wishes shared a family resemblance, a place to rest, a roof that didn't argue with rain, a corner of the map where children could grow tall next to honest fences. They found the valley not because it was on the way, but because it felt like an answer. Someone stepped out of a wagon and put a hand to the nearest trunk. The tree, courteous, did not move. The person listened and then smiled, as if they had heard something ordinary and reassuring, like the word yes, spoken in a voice that had known you since morning. Cabins began as sketches in the air, then as frames, then as rooms with floors that creaked in friendly ways. If the wind found a crack in the shutters, it was invited in and given a lap blanket. If the door stuck in damp weather, the door and the weather worked it out together. Roofs learned the lullaby of rain, and rain learned the lullaby of roofs. The first winter was difficult in the way first winters often are. But the valley had a habit of meeting people halfway. A rabbit path revealed itself near the grove. Berries stayed sweet a week longer than anyone expected. The second twilight wrapped itself around cold shoulders and made a little space of silence where stories could be told without the need for big endings. When someone fell ill, the river did not cure them, but it sang the soft song it knows how to sing, and the fever, listening, remembered how to step down. The settlers took notes, not scientific notes at first, hearth notes, bread notes, the kind you make in the margins of a recipe, like, add a handful more if the day has been long. In the corners of those pages, other observations appeared. The fog tasted faintly of blueberries today. The wind changed direction at noon, but did not apologize. I set a cup on the porch. In the morning, a moth was sleeping inside it like a boat at anchor. They learned the valley's odd kindnesses. The way the post would be exactly where you left it, even if you forgot you set it down. The way a dropped needle never quite makes it to the cracks between floorboards, as if the house reached out a finger at the last moment and said, "Not that one. You'll need it." The way a child looking for a lost marble would find it not under the bed, but nestled in a windowsill groove, waiting where the afternoon light turns everything gold. Weather practice being interesting but not cruel. Snow arrived like a quiet guest, took off its shoes at the threshold, and melted in tidy ways that made puddles shaped like maps of places worth visiting. Lightning came sometimes, but used its indoor voice in this valley and seemed to aim for the far hills. Spring, when it unrolled itself, did so with a patience that made everyone else a little more patient too. By the second summer, a small square appeared where paths naturally crossed. Someone set a bench there without claiming it. Someone else planted a tree that knew how to give shade to dogs as well as people. A bell was hung, not for alarms, only for announcements, and even then rung with a tone that made shoulders relax. Traditions grew like ivy, anchored in kindness and curiosity. The first blueberry fog day turned into an annual picnic, where everyone brought something blue. The first time the river braided itself into 3 channels at once, the town braided 3 ropes and hung them as a decoration in the square. On long evenings when work ended and the moon took its time, someone would bring out a lantern and hold it high to see the shapes of moths against the glass. "Look," they'd say, as if the moths were old friends back from far places. They remembered us. The oddities never left, but they were never unfriendly. Once a wooden signpost at the edge of town turned a quarter turn by itself in the night. No one minded. The new angle pointed travelers toward a safer path that had always been there but had preferred to be not quite found until then. Once a scarecrow disappeared from a field and reappeared the next morning at the schoolhouse doorway, hat tipped, straw neat, as if it had wanted an education. The children thanked it with a ribbon, and that seemed to satisfy everyone involved. People wrote letters to relatives in other places, letters with lines like, "It is as if the town nods when we speak," and "You would like the lake. It remembers not to be cold at the ankles," and "Nothing here is in a hurry," which means we don't have to be either. Some letters likely traveled far. A few addressed simply, "To the person who needs this," found their way somehow to exactly the right hands. The postmaster never explained how. The postmaster didn't need to. The valley handled it. If a map maker came through, and once in a while one did, they would stand in the square and look around with that look map makers get, the one that means they are deciding whether the world in front of them is best conveyed with a line or a dot. They always ended up choosing a dot. But if you traced your finger to that dot at night, you might feel the paper warm under the pad of your finger, as if the town knew you were thinking of it and said hello back. By the time autumn's first leaf let go, people had begun to call the place Gravity Falls. Some said it was for the way the river dropped over low, steady falls at the north end of the lake. Others said it was because the valley kept things, held them gently, didn't let them drift too far away. Both explanations felt true. The town didn't argue. A little more time passed, and the valley, which had always been a story looking for listeners, found itself crowded with them. Not crowded like a fairground, crowded like a family table pulled out with the extra leaves and every chair filled. And the chairs that weren't quite chairs, stools, trunks, an upturned crate, filled too. The odd, the ordinary, the impossible, the everyday, each took a place. Someone refilled the pitchers, someone lit the lamps, and the stories began to look like a town. Breathe in, breathe out. Imagine the square's lamp casting a circle that's big enough for everyone. Imagine that you are in the circle. The day is over. The town is not done with you. It is keeping you. That is different from being held. It is a softer thing. Soon you will know your way around without looking. For now, we'll walk together. Gravity Falls did not forget time exactly. It kept time the way a good neighbor keeps an eye on your porch when you're away. Attentive, patient, not nosy. Mornings arrived when they were expected. Noon placed its warm hand on the backs of people bending over gardens. Evening stood at the tree line and waited until the last chore was finished before dimming the sky. The clocks in the square were accurate, but forgiving, and sometimes, without anyone adjusting them, they seemed to slow for rain and hasten for laughter. Highways learned to curve around the valley without resenting it. Tourists found the county and went elsewhere with no bad feelings, as if they'd promised to save this little place for another day. Mail carriers knew the way in, and more importantly, the way out. Planners in distant offices looked over maps with narrow eyes and said, "We'll get to that dot later." And then they didn't, and no one in the valley minded. The town had streets, of course, and the streets had names, and the names were the kind that made sense when you saw them. Mill Lane, even after the mill was just a door leaned against itself. Lantern Row, where lace curtains warmed at dusk. Juniper Way, which always smelled faintly of something clean. But the streets also had moods. Some took you by the hand and asked you to hurry a little so you would make the pie contest. Some set a gentle hand on your shoulder and suggested you look up at that one cloud right there that seemed to be holding still for your benefit. Windows knew when to glow. They chose evening mostly, but they had a weakness for certain afternoons when the light broke into gold, and dust motes practiced being snow. On those days, passing a window was like passing a small private holiday. Inside, someone stirred a pot. Someone folded a sweater. Someone laughed at a joke that didn't travel through glass, but made its shape known anyway. The library had a door that remembered every hand that had ever turned its knob. It opened with a little extra welcome for new hands and a contented sigh for familiar ones. The air inside smelled like ink and leaf, like paper that had thought about things and decided to rest. Shelves leaned in toward each other just a fraction, as if to keep conversations warm. If you stayed late, the stacks breathed in that almost noticeable way buildings do, settling their boards, letting stories migrate a shelf or two so they could whisper to different neighbors. The post office learned to be a place where secrets and kindnesses crossed paths. Letters with precise addresses went where they were told. Letters addressed simply to the person who needs this, consulted with the gentle intelligence that ran through the whole town and delivered themselves accordingly. The postmaster stamped each envelope with care. If you listened closely, That stamp made a sound that felt like approval. Packages took their time when they needed to, and hurried when that seemed right. No one scolded them. Shops opened on time, but not sharply. Signs flipped to "Open the way, leaves turn," naturally, with a small sigh of hinge. The diner was the same diner in the morning and at night, and yet somehow kinder at night. When coffee was a promise, and pie was a decision, you could always postpone until after you finished telling your story. The jukebox understood that not every song is a waking song. It had a quiet setting, and in that setting, it played the kind of tunes that keep your thoughts company without stepping on their toes. There were traditions here that sounded almost like jokes if you said them too loudly so people didn't. On the first evening, after the first snow, the town walked its dogs clockwise around the square, and the dogs, who already always knew the right things, set a pace that suited the elderly and the excited both. On the second Tuesday of June, everyone hung one lantern on the back porch where only the lake could see it, and the lake winked back, maybe a little. On the last day of August, children chalked little maps on the sidewalks, routes from home to bakery to library to lake and back, and then rain kindly erased the maps before anyone tripped over them in September. There were places within the town that held their own soft gravity, a bench that always felt 5 degrees warmer than the air, a corner booth at the diner that made even straight-backed people lean into conversation, a lamppost where moths danced slow circles, and the circles were pretty enough that sometimes people found themselves dancing slow circles too, without calling it dancing. The town had a bell that rang only for gentle reasons, to begin the harvest supper, to signal a story hour starting in the square, to welcome someone home. The bell ringer knew this and respected it, so the bell never startled. It gathered. Its note carried across roofs and into kitchens where hands paused in the flour and then dusted themselves off and reached for sweaters. Heads lifted, doors swung, feet found their way, already knowing the route. Maps still drew Gravity Falls as a dot. But the town was more like a pattern, a repeating kindness, a measured breath, a way of turning toward each other at the ends of days. If a stranger asked directions, the answer was always accurate, and always included a piece of advice like, "If you pass the cedar that looks like it's listening, you've gone slightly too far," or "There's a breeze at that corner in the afternoon. Bring a scarf if you're the kind to notice breezes." Children here grew up knowing something that even many adults in other places forgot, that the world can be both mysterious and safe. They learned to say, "I don't know," in a tone that sounded like, "I'd like to find out slowly." They learned to put a book back, not because someone told them to, but because the shelf looked like it was waiting. They learned to check on neighbors without making a fuss of it, the way the town checked on them. As for visitors, those who found Gravity Falls by accident, because their car wanted a rest, or their feet chose the quieter path, did not feel like intruders. The town had a way of making space that did not displace anyone. A fresh pie always cooled on a sill that had room for one more slice. A dock always had one more board that could hold one more pair of tired legs. If time forgot anything here, it forgot to hurry. It forgot to boast. It forgot to make loud announcements about how little of it there was. Time in Gravity Falls worked a second job as a host. It refilled cups. It cleared plates gently. It noticed when you were finished and waited a moment longer just in case you weren't. The nights especially were generous. They came early in winter and fashionably late in summer, but whenever they arrived, they put their hands on the town's shoulders and rubbed small circles there until everything softened. Porch lights drew little halos on steps. The lake kept its promise to reflect stars for those who didn't feel like tilting their heads back. The wind, which had traveled far, slept here as if it, too, were from this place. And in the easy hush of those nights, the town told itself stories. Stories about the valley before names. Stories about the first lanterns bobbing in. Stories about the letters that made it where they were most needed. None of the stories had villains you had to escape from. If there were difficult parts, they resolved the way knots loosen under patient fingers. And the telling always ended with the same understanding. Tomorrow will still be here, and you will be too. If your eyelids feel heavier now, that's not a mistake. If your breath has found a slower pace, that's just the town's rhythm teaching yours. We have more places to go, more corners to peek into, more gentle oddities to befriend. But there's no need to force wakefulness. Sleep can take you whenever it wants. The story will keep itself. When you return, the bench will still be warmer than it should be. The bell will still be polite. The library door will still remember your hand. For now, if you're still with me, let's stand at the edge of the square and look at the windows as they glow. Let's listen to the last dishes, the last jokes, and the last pages turning. Let's let the word tomorrow set softly on the tongue like a spoonful of honey. And when you're ready, we'll step toward the next light. The door knows you are coming long before your hand finds the brass knob, not because of magic that needs announcing, but because wood remembers footsteps. The grain in the boards keeps a gentle record of every visit, the way a favorite chair remembers the shape of your shoulder. When you push the door, it opens in a friendly arc, a well-practiced welcome that stops exactly where you expect it to. The bell above does not ring so much as hum, one note, low, kind. Inside, the air is cool and calm, like the shade under a bridge in summer. Dust motes float with purpose, not hurrying, not lost. Their drift makes the light look slower, and that helps your breath slow too. Take one in, let one out. If you listen a moment longer, you'll hear it. A soft settling that sounds almost like the whole building is breathing. It isn't a trick. Paper inhales, wood exhales, leather sighs. The shelves expand a fingertip's width and then ease back, the same way your chest rises and falls when you have forgotten to think about it. The front desk is worn in all the good places. 2 elbows have polished half-moons in the wood, and the polish has been polished by years of sweaters. A small sign in tidy handwriting reads, "Open late if needed." No posted hours could be gentler than that. The librarian, sometimes an older woman with a cardigan the color of tea, sometimes a patient man with a pencil behind his ear, sometimes a cousin filling in. Always someone who knows how to keep voices soft, looks up and smiles as if you were expected. You were. On your left, a wall of card catalogs remains, not because computers failed, but because drawers are a kind of lullaby. Each has a brass pull cool to the touch. Each holds index cards that seem to smell faintly of peppermint and rain. If you slide a drawer open, the cards whisper. Names, titles, subjects that sound like bedtime. Constellations, safe storms, helpful maps, how to rest. Near the bottom, a drawer labeled Lost Found Topics waits for the questions people didn't know how to ask. Its cards are patient. They always have time. The biography aisle settles into a contented line, spines like shoulders leaning together for warmth. If your palm runs along them, you will feel raised letters, small ridges like the bark of a friendly tree. Some of the names are famous here. Others are famous only to a kitchen table of 4. The library makes no distinction in the quality of its care. Every life is shelved respectfully. Children's books live near the wide windows. Their covers glow like lanterns at dusk. When the wind moves the branches outside, little currents of shadow swim across the pages, and the characters seem to nod yes when they should, no when they must, and will see when they are being clever. The reading rug is softer than any rug has to be, and it is always just the right temperature for knees and elbows and the weight of a chin. If you put your hand flat into its fibers, you will find, tucked far away where no vacuum can reach, a stray glitter fleck from a craft days 6 summers ago. Glitter like that chooses where to live. The library said yes. Farther back, in the quietest aisle of all, ancient atlases live with their heavy confidence. Their corners are rounded by time, and their pages smell like far rain. Some maps show countries you could fly to tomorrow. Some show territories that appear only in January. Sunrises are when the lake is thinking. One map is just a field of blue. The legend reads, known calm. Another is covered in tiny dots, like breadcrumbs scattered for a careful bird. If you run your finger along those dots, you may feel your pulse steady as if something inside recognizes the path. There is a table in the center room that always looks recently cleared, not scrubbed raw, just tidied with affection. A vase stands there, full of whatever grows kindly that season. Ferns that unfurl like yawned arms, catkins that look like soft notes of music, one branch of pine that smells like the word fresh when you say it quietly. No one claims the table, though the librarian might set a cup of tea there and forget to drink it, because helping someone find the exact book they want, even before they knew they wanted it, is the kind of work that makes tea cool. When night settles early, which it sometimes does in Gravity Falls, even in months that usually prefer to stay out late, the lamps in the library come on in pairs. They are good at keeping each other company. Pools of gold gather on pages. The ceiling fades into sleep, leaving the light where it is most useful. People read. People don't read and simply sit. Both are reading of a sort. In the corner, a spinning globe turns once every hour, not because anyone is winding it, but because the building's breathing shifts the air enough to keep continents unlonely. Some evenings, the library hosts what it calls listening hour. The sign says, all ages welcome. No one reads aloud, no one lectures. People simply occupy chairs and beanbags and steps and listen to each other turning pages. The sound is strangely comforting. Paper lifting and landing, a throat cleared and then soothed, the soft thud of a book closing like a bird settling into its nest. Somewhere nearby, the clock hums a minute into place. It is difficult to say exactly what is learned in such an hour. It is easy to say that people leave more rested than they arrived. The building keeps small habits. Once a week after closing, the shelves make tiny adjustments, scooting books together that want to talk and easing apart volumes that need a little space. A meteorology book and a recipe collection might find themselves shoulder to shoulder, and the next afternoon someone will come in asking how to bake during rain. And there the answer will be, halfway written already by the arrangement. A book of local legends may sit down beside a field guide to mosses. Soon a child who prefers both stories and facts will borrow them together and sleep especially well that night. If you walk to the far end, past periodicals, past the quiet study nook, where the chair cushions breathe a slow, reassuring oof when you sit, you will find a door. It is not hidden. It simply lives in the habit of being overlooked until someone needs it. The sign on it reads, Archive, open when asked kindly. If you ask kindly, it opens. Inside, the shelves are lower and denser, as if time itself liked to curl up close. Old town newspapers live here, bound in soft green. Their headlines are modest, their stories warm, Lantern parade well attended. Blueberry crop generous again. Mailbox repaired. Mailbox thanks young helper. On a high shelf, a box holds a ribbon and a note. For the scarecrow who visited school, return if you wish. The ribbon is replaced every few years when it looks tired, whether or not the scarecrow takes it out for a walk. By the door, a little plaque says, "The library asks only that you read with care. People do. Pages turn like boats, leaving small wakes. Spines are not forced. Even when a bookmark is a found leaf, it is placed with patience. On the checkout counter, another sign sits in a frame. It reads, 'Bring back your book when you're ready to return or when it's ready to return you.' Due dates exist, but they are guidelines that somehow everyone is eager to meet. Sometimes late you might catch the librarian whispering thank you to the shelves. And sometimes the shelves answer, a nearly not sound like the applause of moth wings. On those nights as you leave, the bell sings its one low tone again, and the door closes behind you with a seal that keeps the warm in and the draft out. The library breathes, you breathe, the street breathes, the pines breathe. Everything has settled to the same slow rhythm. If sleep is close, you can let it take you now. If you want to keep walking, we'll head toward the shops, the diner, and the doors that are only doors until you ask them what else they can be. Take another easy breath. We're in no hurry. Morning opens the town like a book you've read before and loved. The kind where you remember the chapter titles, but every sentence feels freshly kind. Signs flip to open, not in unison, but in a harmony of hinges. The street smells like toast, coffee, oranges, rain that hasn't fallen yet, and the clean mineral note of the lake minding its own business. At the corner, the diner waits with its wide windows and the polite squeak of its booths. The stools along the counter are worn smooth by elbows and stories. The pastry case holds pies that are never the same shape twice, because the baker refuses to force a crust into anything but the day's chosen curve. Each pie has a little handwritten tag tucked under the plate. Apple, steady blueberry, calms. Peach, for good news. Pecans, reminds the past to be sweet. If you ask for a slice and can't decide, the person pouring your coffee will glance at you, glance at the window, and choose the one the light is pointing toward. It works out. Music lives in a silver jukebox in the corner. It knows the difference between morning and night, and chooses accordingly. In the morning, it prefers songs with soft percussion and gentle promises. At noon, it rests. After dinner, it returns to humming the quiet favorites that make people feel like the day left a ribbon around itself. The volume never needs adjusting. The jukebox listens to the room. A narrow shop across the way is stocked with helpful things. Thread that refuses knots, pencils that don't break when you are thinking hard, envelopes that find their destinations even when the addresses are only mostly right. The bell above its door laughs a little. A handwritten list near the register reads, "Things we don't sell. Regret, hurry, perfect." Underneath, in a different pen, someone has added, "But we do offer exchanges." The proprietor is good at those, turning doubts into plans, to-do lists into to-done lists, shoulds into coulds, and then into don'ts need to anymores. Customers leave with paper bags that feel light even when they are full. Next door, a gift shop displays oddities that behave themselves. Snow globes with scenes that change on certain nights. Postcards that arrive at precisely the right hour. A basket of pocket stones that warm in your hand to the exact temperature of courage. The proprietor dusts with a feather duster that looks like it might fly off if invited, but it doesn't. It knows its job. A sign at the register reads, "Curio Return Policy. If an object tries to be something it isn't, bring it back. We will talk with it. Few returns are needed. Objects here are content to be exactly themselves, which is why they are good company. The post office keeps its dignified rhythm. The line moves as if it knew your needs and your patience. The clerk weighs letters with the same care a parent uses when checking a child's backpack before school. A small box labeled kindness stamp sits on the counter. They are free, and yet people take only one at a time. Stamped onto envelopes, these little squares seem to tell the paper to arrive feeling welcome. Out back, the sorting room hums a pattern like a steady heart. Now and then a letter marked, to the one who needs. This slips down a chute that seems to lead nowhere and everywhere. No one is concerned. The system works. Hidden doors? Oh, yes. The town is full of them. Not secret doors that keep you out, but shy doors that wait for the right question. Behind the diner's pantry, the shelving swings out on quiet wheels to reveal a tiny room with a round window. The window looks at the river in its kindest bend. 2 chairs sit there, always angled just so, as if they believed in conversation without interrupting. No one reserves the space. When you need it, it is empty. When you don't, someone else's need is answered, and you never even know. At the back of the stationery shop, the wall of greeting cards has a panel that nudges open if you run your fingertips along the edge while thinking of someone you miss without sadness. Inside is a hallway papered with old maps of the town. Every map is a little wrong in a charming way. A street where none exists. A pond where a park now stands. A hill misdrawn too steep. The hallway ends at a door labeled Today. If you open it, you find Today. The same street you just left. The same sky. The same breeze. And yet stepping through the door makes Today feel like a chosen place, not an accident. People smile afterward for reasons they can't fully name. Behind the florist is a cool room where the air smells like green and water. Buckets hold stems that can be combined into everything a day might need. Congratulations. Sympathy. I'm proud of you. I'm sorry. I'm here. I brought bread. Tucked between the buckets is a narrow door with a frosted window. It leads to the alley. The frosted glass turns the alley light into something like lake light. The florist sometimes stands there in the afternoons, breathing in the balance of shade and bloom. If a customer asks what is back there, she says, a reminder. The tinkerer's shop, with its workbench full of neat chaos, hides its door under a curtained shelf. If you pull the curtain while thinking of a puzzle that once made you happy to be puzzled, the door reveals itself, hinges greased and polite. Inside, a closet of possible parts. Springs that will take only the right amount of bounce. Screws that never over-tighten. Bottles of oil with labels like, for squeaks that sound a little lonely and for hinges that need practice at letting go. Children who love to take things apart are gently encouraged to put 1 or 2 things back together before they leave. They do, and they beam like lamps. Evening in the shops is soft. The diner dims to a glow. The gift shop's snow globes switch to nighttime scenes. The post office clicks its last lock with a sound like contentment. The secret rooms wait, never sulking when no one visits. They like being possibilities as much as they like being found. Out on the street, open and hidden doors alike breathe out the day. The hinges, the latches, the bolts and chains all relax into their places. You can feel the town exhale with them. If your eyes are heavy, let them rest. If you want one more stop, we'll walk downhill to the lake, where reflections understand more than mirrors do, and where the water knows how to tell a story without making a sound. One more easy breath. In, out. The shore is not far. The path to the lake is a kindness woven into dirt and root. It curves the way a hand does when it is offering you something necessary and simple. At night, the path is edged by the soft push of grasses and the shinier dark of smooth stones. The pines step back as you near the shore, the better to let the sky come forward. The lake likes an audience, but it never demands one. At dawn, the water wears a shawl of mist. It looks heavy, but it isn't. It lifts when the first bird suggests it's time. That's the tone of morning here. Suggestion instead of command. A heron takes a slow step. The lake imitates the gesture and becomes a tablet of ripples, each one carrying a thought to shore. If you stand on the dock and breathe with the water, inhale as a wave approaches, exhale as it leaves, you will feel your bones settle into a rhythm older than clocks. By noon, the lake is a single silver word that keeps being spelled in new ways by wind and cloud. Fishing lines trace punctuation marks, commas and ellipses, pauses, never exclamation points. The lake dislikes shouting. Children's laughter moves across the surface like small, bright boats. Farther out, a rowboat rocks in a way that says, "We have nothing but time." On its floor, exactly 2 leaves have agreed to ride along. They enjoy every crossing. They are leaves who like stories. Sometimes gentle oddities visit. A current will turn in place, a small river inside the lake, giving minnows a temporary merry-go-round. A circle of lily pads will drift together to make a green coin and stop in exactly the puddle of sun a turtle wants. A dragonfly will think the oar is a fallen branch, settle, and consider its life for a long minute. All of this is ordinary here. All of it is also a little more than ordinary, the way a familiar lullaby is more than the notes it uses. Afternoon lays out a long rug of light toward the far bank. If you follow it with your eyes, you'll find a cedar that bends the way a person bows when they agree. Under that cedar is a patch of sand that stays warm later than the rest. People use it for reading and for not reading. If you look up from your page and catch your reflection floating between the paragraphs in the sky, you may notice that your reflection blinks with you, but slower, as if it were reminding you to take your time. Toward evening, the lake practices its best trick, which is not even a trick so much as a gentle choice. It chooses to reflect not just what is above it, but what would calm the eyes of the person looking. If you come to the shore holding a worry, the water will find you an image that helps. A long, even cloud that looks like a bed freshly made. A slice of moon in a perfect, careful arc. A bird crossing without hurry. The lake is not magic in a hurry. It is kindness that learned to be glass. There is a pier with planks that do not wobble. Someone checks them. No one knows who. The nails stay flat in their holes. The boards speak in a language that even children understand. You are safe. Sit. Dangle your feet. Watch the light do that thing it does where it breaks into longer and longer threads until night. When night arrives, someone sometimes places lanterns at the pier's end. Not for show, for the comfort of knowing where the edge is. The flames make little pillows of brightness. Moths turn their soft applause in circles around them. On certain mild nights, the town holds a lantern flotilla. People come down to the shore in small groups and lower paper lanterns, each floating on a little wooden base onto the surface. Before setting them free, they whisper something into the flame. Not a wish exactly, more like a thank you, for healing, for a rainy day that was cozy, for a letter that arrived just when needed. The lanterns drift into a gentle pattern no one designs, as if the lake had a sense of choreography that values space and nearness in equal measure. From the dock, the flotilla looks like a midnight garden. From the hill, like a new constellation that decided to rest on water for a while. The lake keeps confidences. People talk to it at odd hours and tell it things they cannot yet tell each other. The water listens with perfect attention, and gives nothing away except calm. In the morning, the surface looks blank and bright again, like a fresh page. The thoughts are held in the depths, where they turn into patience that spreads slowly through the town without needing anyone to name it. In winter, when the air decides it wants to practice stillness with more discipline, the lake complies. Ice forms. It is not a hard command, but a conversation. The water thickens into glass. Snow arrives and arranges itself in sentences across the smooth. Children read those sentences with their boots, and the lake applauds by holding their reflections up for them like a mirror that never drops. The ice sings sometimes, a low whale-like sound that reminds everyone to step lightly and to respect the ancient agreements. The town does. The lake smiles its winter smile and sleeps lightly underneath. We could stay here a long time. Time does not mind, but we have friends to visit, and one of them keeps a building full of oddities in good order, with a heart that understands more than it admits. When you're ready, we'll turn from the water, follow the path back to the streetlights, and let the sound of keys and quiet jokes lead us to him. Another breath, steady as the dock, in and out. We're walking toward warm light. The mystery shack wakes before its owner, but only by a minute. The floorboards stretch in their seams. The displays adjust themselves into their most presentable angles. The bell above the front door clears its throat softly, the way someone might before telling a memorized story. In the tiny kitchen, a coffee maker begins to think about it. Then the apartment door opens and Stan steps out, already wearing the day like a jacket that has known him for years. He has a way with the morning. He greets it with a kind of gruff kindness, as if the sun were a customer he likes but won't spoil. His slippers know the route. Kettle, blinds, the small note on the fridge that reads, "Call if you need to," and the number that never changes. He checks the till, he taps the glass of the display case with the knuckle that always finds the same spot. He tells the front door, "Let's give them a show," and the front door agrees. To some, the shack is a tourist trap. To others, it is a museum of the ordinary dressed up for the joy of being a little extraordinary. To Stan, it is a stage, a shelter, a friend that needs dusting, and a place where the day can be coaxed into delight. He tells tall tales in a tone that says every tale is tall, and some are taller. He does not lie. He entertains. He offers a wink strong enough to carry a person from one end of a hard week to the other. If a child is nervous about the exhibit with the blinking eye, Stan makes the eye blink slower, and the child braver. If a grandmother wants a quiet bench and a receipt that is easy to read, she gets both and a glass of water besides. If a couple is arguing softly about whether a certain artifact is real, Stan says, "Depends on what you mean by real," and hands them a guide that explains nothing and somehow answers everything. He has learned that people don't always need facts first. They often need care. After care, facts line up politely and wait their turns. His pockets hold strange things. Ticket stubs from years ago, rubber bands that never snap. A tiny screwdriver, a marble, a folded note that says, "You did fine," and another that says, "Try again tomorrow." He doesn't always remember why something is in there until the exact moment someone needs it. Then it appears in his hand as if it had been waiting for the cue. He will make a joke and deflect a thank you, but the thank you settles into his jacket anyway and rides there the rest of the day like a quiet metal. Between tours, he straightens displays. He tells the dust it has 40 minutes, and then its time is up. The dust tries to bargain. He wins. He has a mild argument with the cash register, and then pats it as if it were a stubborn dog. He checks the vending machine and the door behind it, the one that the town pretends not to see, the one that leads to places where other kinds of questions live. He does not open it as part of the show. He opens it when the day is done, or when the day needs a reminder that there are rooms under the rooms and stories under the stories, and that all of them are parts of one home. He keeps certain rituals. One is a midday walk around the building, slow and pretending to be inspection. He nods at the siding. He nudges a stone back into place with the side of his shoe. He picks up a wrapper and folds it into a square before tossing it. He listens to the trees behind the shack the way you listen to a good storyteller. Not interrupting, smiling in the pauses, understanding more than is said. The trees approve of him. He is sturdy the way they are sturdy. Another ritual comes at closing. He flips the sign with ceremony. He thanks the exhibits as if they were performers. He counts the till under a lamp that makes everything look warmer than it already is. He writes a note on a scrap and leaves it where morning will find it. The notes are practical and not at all practical, often both at once. Fix squeak near bear, order more batteries. Remember to tell the kid in the red cap he did a brave thing. He tucks them under a magnet shaped like a fish that refuses to look surprised. The fish keeps secrets. On special days, when the afternoon light is particularly kind, when laughter has stayed in the air an hour after the last group left, when some quiet reconciliation has happened without witnesses, Stan sits alone at the front desk and lets the room be exactly what it is. The shack is a house of wonders, yes? It is also a house of work, a house of plans that changed, a house of plans that held, a house that took in a pair of curious children and made room for their courage. He looks toward the stairs and sees not steps, but a path he is glad he learned to walk. He loves his family loudly and defensively, like a man guarding a campfire from a sudden rain. He tells stories that make him the fool, if that will make them laugh. He pretends not to care when he cares the most. When the day asks him to be soft, he scowls a little and is soft anyway. He has a key ring that sounds like sleigh bells when it jingles, and no one teases him about it because everyone likes to hear it. At night, after the last light is off and the bell has given its final weary nod, he pauses by the front door. His palm presses the wood. He says good job to the whole place, which includes himself, though he would not say that part out loud. The building settles one tiny click closer to the foundation. Outside, the pines listen to his steps climb the apartment stairs, and the wind, which has learned to respect certain kinds of effort, chooses a different route so it won't rattle the eaves near his window. If you imagine him asleep, know that even in sleep he is keeping watch, keeping jokes for tomorrow, keeping a pocket warm for a child who will need a marble, exactly when a marble can save the day. He is the shack's heartbeat, not perfect. Better than perfect. Human. Reliable. Here. We will visit one more set of footsteps now. They move more quietly in halls lit by work lamps and ideas. They belong to a mind that went very far and then came home, and whose notebooks now read like atlases of careful wonder. Walk softly. He will look up from a page and see you, and his hello will be shy and warm all at once. Breathe in, breathe out. Down we go. The basement door knows a different rhythm of knock. It responds to persistence instead of volume. When you open it, the stairs give a single creak that means welcome to those who understand tools. The air below is threaded with the comfortable sense of graphite, oil, resin, pine shavings, and pages that have been turned so often their fibers have learned your fingerprints. Ford is at the long table, which is not so much a table as a landscape of ideas at various temperatures. Spiral notebooks lie open like small, attentive mouths. Folders stack into quiet mountains. A magnifying lens waits beside a tray of bolts that have never once been the wrong size for what he asked of them. There is chalk on the floor where he once drew a diagram that he did not erase because the ghost of it answers a different question that visitors sometimes bring without knowing it. His coat hangs on the back of a chair, pockets heavy with field crumbs, a leaf that refuses to dry out, a pebble that says, "Only look," a stub of pencil that refuses to disappear until the word it was born to write finally shows up one evening and lands neatly on a page. He wears a sweater that is never quite new and is always clean. His glasses catch the lamplight and hold it. When he lifts his head, he focuses fast, like a bird making a choice of branch. And then his whole face softens because it is you. He says hello in the tone of someone who has learned how to keep worlds in his head and still make room for guests. He offers you a chair. He offers you a mug that tastes faintly of the last dozen teas the mug has held, an archive of warmth in its own right. He clears a small space on the table, not because he needs the room, but because he wants you to see a particular page. The page is thick and forgiving. On it, a careful hand has drawn star shapes that are not exactly constellations and not exactly letters. He taps one with the back of the pen. "I thought this only lived out there," he says, meaning far. "Turns out it lives here," he adds, meaning close, meaning in the way the wind turns at the river bend, or how the lake lights find each other on nights when boats drift just so. He has traveled more than most. His mind still does, in loops and spirals and graceful arcs. Once upon a time he went very far, in directions most people do not, and brought back pages full of warnings and wonders. He does not dramatize this. He does not underplay it. He files things where they belong. The drawers are labeled in tidy script: anomalies, observations, questions, reassurances. He reaches into reassurances more often than he used to. It contains notes that begin with phrases like, "It can be understood, and you are not alone, and the pattern is patient." When he was younger, the questions were loud and his answers raced to meet them. Now the questions sit down across from him like old friends and speak in reasonable voices. He listens, and his answers have the quality of good bridges, strong, simple, able to hold families, able to hold laughter. He measures twice. He cuts once. He jots the time and the weather in the corner of each entry, not out of habit alone, but because times and weathers are part of truths and deserve to be remembered. He loves a field note more than most, and yet the notes have become less about capturing and more about companionship. Instead of specimen, exhibits unusual luminescence. He now writes, "It glowed softly, like a thought," someone almost said. Instead of "approach with caution," he writes, "approach with patience." The journals have not grown less rigorous. They have grown kinder. That is a better kind of rigor for a town that lives comfortably with strangeness. On a shelf nearby, 3 volumes rest, work he did long ago when the world and he were both sharper. He touches their spines, not to relive their writing, but to thank them for carrying him here. Newer books sit beside them, edges still springy, full of maps he did not rush to finish. He has learned to leave blanks on purpose, spaces where future understanding will land without having to push something else out of the way. If you ask him about the door behind the vending machine, he nods, the way a person nods about a distant relative who once caused a scene at a wedding and then learned to send birthday cards on time. "It's there," he says. "It will be there when it's needed. It isn't always needed." His voice is gentle with that, careful not to make mystery a habit that replaces kindness. He has learned there are many kinds of doors. Some open to rooms full of blue light and equations. Some open to kitchens where someone is making soup. He respects both. Sometimes on afternoons when the rain decides to stay and write its long letter to the shingles, Ford moves from the table to the small armchair in the corner and reads aloud to himself, not theory, stories. He likes stories where someone goes a long way and then comes home carrying something that fits in a pocket, something polished by the journey, something that makes the light inside a house feel slightly steadier. He reads with a voice you could fall asleep to without missing anything important, because nothing important will leave while you nap. It will wait politely and be there when your eyes open. He keeps tools in order, not from fussiness, from gratitude. A well-coiled cord shows respect. A sharpened pencil is a promise. When something breaks, he does not scold it. He asks it what it needs. Often it needs a little patience and the right light. He gives both. He writes on the wall above his bench, "Try the simple thing first." He underlines it once, neatly. Next to it in smaller letters. And if that doesn't work, ask for help. The second line has saved him as often as the first. A photograph sits in a frame near the lamp. 2 boys, 2 men. A boat. A building with a sign that refuses to stop being funny. The picture has a smudge where a thumb always goes when someone picks it up. The smudge is clean sometimes, but it returns, which seems right. He looks at the photo when equations go dim. He looks at it when plans go bright. It is not a cure. It is a compass. It points toward a kind of true that is not academic and not vague. It points toward the table, the stairs, the porch, the lake, the town, the family. It points toward the days he almost missed learning to love, and did not miss after all. When he goes upstairs into ordinary air, he squints for 1 second. Not because the light is bright, but because he is re-entering a page where he is a character instead of a narrator. He likes that page. It is written in pie slices and front desk bells and good to see yous from people who have learned that a brilliant mind is best greeted with a steady handshake and a seat at dinner. He thanks them in his own ways, fixing the hinge that is always stuck, finding the lost screw that has always rattled, offering to carry the thing that looks heavier than the person holding it wants to admit. If you say goodnight from the bottom of the stairs, he will answer without looking up, but with a warmth that reaches you anyway. "Good night," he says. And the word holds a little of the weight of a star and a little of the softness of a blanket. Later, when the lamp clicks and the journals rest their spines and the tools agree to dream of being used well tomorrow, the basement takes one long breath. The house above hears it and answers. The pines hear both and keep their watch. You can sleep now if sleep is asking, or you can keep walking with me toward the twins who carry summer in their pockets and a town on their side. We will meet them next time. For tonight, let your breath match the slow, exact rhythm of a turning page. In, out, in, out. The story is patient. The night is kind. Gravity Falls is keeping the light on. Morning in the attic begins with the softest kind of light. The kind that pauses at the edges of things, checking if everyone is ready to wake. A triangle of sunshine climbs the wall, finds a poster corner, warms a stack of comics, and finally settles on 2 beds that have learned the names of their sleepers. The beds are good listeners. They keep all the small secrets of a summer spent growing braver. On one side, a cap with a pine tree sits on the nightstand like a promise. On the other, a sweater with a shooting star naps across the footboard, as if it stayed up late telling jokes and fell asleep mid-punchline. Between these is a shared space that knows 100 kinds of quiet. Map-making quiet, crafts quiet, the hush of 2 people thinking the same thought at the same time, and grinning because they both arrived there first. Dipper learns the shape of the day by the weight of his notebook in his hands. He likes the feel of a pencil that has already written something useful, and is ready to write the next useful thing. He likes questions that arrive politely and wait their turn. He likes standing still long enough to hear a small sound no one else noticed. The tap of a moth at glass, the click of a floorboard that means nothing and therefore means this is home. He reads not to get ahead, but to understand where he is. When the notes get dense, he breathes in the pine sap air at the window, and the words make more room for themselves. Mabel learns the day by color. She chooses a sweater the way a singer chooses a first note. Today is purple with sparkles, she declares, and somehow it is. She collects moments like stickers, glittery ones, puffy ones, scratch and sniff ones that smell like fresh peaches and glue and summer. She believes in people the way gardens believe in spring. She laughs at worries without being unkind to them, and when sadness visits, she hands it a cookie and a blanket and reminds it that it doesn't have to stay long if it doesn't want to. Together, they make a shape that is steadier than either alone. Dipper points and wonders. Mabel points and invites. He counts steps. She skips one on purpose so the path learns to be playful. He says, let's think this through. And she says, let's think this through while we walk. And it turns out both ways lead the feet in the right direction. When the afternoon hands them a puzzle, they move their chairs close together and solve it like a song. Melody and harmony, no part drowning the other, each part making sense of the rest. The attic becomes a laboratory, an art studio, a quiet fort, a rain shelter, a rehearsal space for courage. There is a corner where a corkboard holds index cards, questions that are not in a hurry. There is a shelf where glitter has settled into the wood grain, forgiving and unremovable. A constellated reminder that joy leaves evidence. There is a window whose latch knows the exact amount of pressure needed, and an old fan that turns the air into a lake breeze even when the lake is busy, being a mirror for the sky. Suze knocks sometimes, never with urgency, always with a rhythm that means, you got time? He brings snacks that make crumbs in funny shapes, and advice that arrives like a toolbox. Simple, useful, labeled by kindness. Wendy leans in the doorway the way shade leans across a picnic table, effortless, appreciated, exactly right. She knows how to be older without being far away. She knows the good spots, to stand during sunsets. She knows when to say nothing and let you find the words you need on your own. Days expand around small missions, cataloging the way the light in the forest changes between noon and almost noon, testing whether the diner's pie tastes different if eaten outside on the left bench versus the right, timing how long it takes to walk from the attic to the lake if you stop to say hello to every dog. Longer, gloriously. Learning the pace of the town's heart by tracing the roots of people who make it beat. Mail carriers, librarians, the florist who says every bouquet is a wish tied up with a bow, the bell ringer who can make celebration sound like a lullaby. There are late afternoons when the twins sit on the Mystery Shack steps and silently agree that the day has already told them enough. They let it end early. They watch the street lean toward evening. Dipper, who likes conclusions, discovers the comfort of commas. Mabel, who likes exclamation points, discovers the strength of periods that promise a new sentence in the morning. At night, the attic glows softly. Flashlights become moons in their palms. They make shadow shapes on the sloped ceiling. Rabbit, duck, dinosaur, heart. Dipper draws quiet diagrams in the notebook margin. How a person can feel two things at once. How to be cautious without saying no to everything. How to try again when trying made your knees wobble the first time. Mabel adds stickers where they fit, but also where they do not on purpose, to remind the paper not to take itself too seriously. They share the last chocolate from a hidden stash that is always somehow not empty. They tell the day thank you in a voice that reaches the floorboards and the roof and the sky. The stars answer by not needing to be counted tonight. When one of them is restless, the other becomes anchor. When one is sure, the other becomes wind. They trade without keeping score. In the morning, no one remembers who was what, only that the ship did not drift from its gentle harbor. Their summer is not a list of emergencies survived. It is a field journal of small braveries, saying hello first, asking a question with a wobbly voice, letting a bad mood move through without trying to fix it with fireworks, telling the truth in a way that lets both people keep their dignity, forgiving, remembering to eat, celebrating tiny things without apology, learning that leaving and returning are different steps in the same dance. If you listen close at the doorframe's old wood, you can hear the house learning from them. It learns to be both sturdy and silly. It learns to trust the pair of feet on the stairs at midnight. It learns that laughter and logic share a wall and that both deserve maintenance. And when the attic finally falls quiet, the house adds a blanket of its own, a warm hush that tucks under the edges of a dream and says, "Sleep now. Tomorrow knows your name." If your eyes grow heavy, let them. The twins understand naps. If you stay a little longer, we'll walk out with them into the woods where neighbors have antlers and too many eyes and names that sound like stories, and where every path curves on purpose, so there's always one more surprise that isn't trying to startle you, only trying to say hello. Breathe in, breathe out. The trees are waiting kindly. The forest at noon is a choir that never argues about who sings lead. Branches brush time into the air, birds stitch silver thread between notes, and the undergrowth murmurs its evergreen yes. If you step carefully, the path steps carefully with you. If you pause, the clearing remembers how to be a room. This is where the neighbors live. The ones who do not get mail but are always somehow up to date. Gnomes go first, because gnomes have opinions about introductions. They arrive in a tidy cluster that looks like a pile of laundry that learned to walk. They are polite in the way that people are when they are deciding which of 4 hats to wear to the same party. One brings jam that tastes like strawberries and also like the memory of a strawberry you ate as a child. One carries a ruler for no reason anyone can determine. Another insists on showing you a rock that looks exactly like a potato and exactly like a rock, depending on how honest you are being with yourself that day. They bow. They ask after your ankles. They offer unsolicited advice about moss care. None of it harms. Some of it helps. The multi-bear lives farther on, where the ground swells gently and the light filters through in beams you could lean a ladder against. He is large in the way comfort is large, soft in the way armchairs are soft, and musical in the way wind chimes hope to be. If you happen upon him practicing, you will hear the deep, round notes of a song that seems to remember things your bones remember. Winter dens and summer berries, the mathematics of paw prints, the quiet certainty of a stream choosing the same path again, because it was good yesterday and will be good tomorrow. He inclines his many heads without fuss. He does not ask for applause. He appreciates it. Manitors keep to a grove that smells like dust motes and old leather, a gym for creatures who prefer philosophy with their strengths. They lift stones because stones consent to it, and set them down carefully, never clattering. They talk about bravery as if it were a muscle you stretch, not a wall you break through. If you listen in from the edge, you might hear one say, "Today I will practice asking for help," and the others nod as if that were the heaviest weight in the room. They notice you without making a show of noticing you. They like boundaries that are clear and paths that are shared. In the wet places, you might meet fins and tails and smiles that bob up exactly as far as they need to be seen. Some introduce themselves with bubbles, others with songs that sound like the inside of a shell. If you write a letter and fold it into a perfect boat, the current will deliver it to whichever river neighbor was meant to read it. You may not get a reply on paper, but you will find a smooth stone on your windowsill the next morning, and you will know it is your reply because it will be the exact temperature of yes. There are deer in the glen that look at you with more eyes than your mind expects, and yet with no more judgment than any good deer has ever had. They blink in careful sequence as if taking turns. They teach you that paying attention can look like many things at once. They do not flee. They do not approach. They share the clearing the way a good host shares a couch. Space for everyone, blankets available, nothing on TV unless you want there to be. Owls keep office hours at dusk. You may book an appointment by standing very still under a cedar and thinking a question without trying to solve it while thinking it. An owl will land nearby, blotting out exactly one star for exactly one moment. The answer may not be delivered in words. It may be delivered in the comfortable weight of being seen. It turns out that is an answer more often than not. Sprites flicker around rotting logs that are busy being not logs anymore, busy becoming soil and mushrooms and 100 private lives. The sprites are light and not light, the feeling you get when you remember a name just in time. They love polite curiosity and dislike netting. If you say, "Hello, I am visiting," they will make your shoelaces glow for 3 steps so you can see where you're going. If you say, "Hello, I am collecting," they will make your shoelaces come untied so you must stop, bend, and think of something else. They are not scolding, they are redirecting. A very old turtle once lived near a stump that everyone assumed was a throne because that is how he sat on it. He knew the names of constellations as well as he knew the names of puddles. Children visited to hear him say the word in a dozen tones that each meant something slightly different. Of weather. Of patience. Of try that again, slower. When he slept, moss brightened around him. When he woke, the moss dimmed, as if the forest were adjusting its lamps. There are creatures you only meet when you are too tired to be impressed by them. Gentle shadows that decide not to test you. Echoes that refuse to repeat your worries. A fox that leaves a feather instead of tracks. A sign that what you thought was hunting was actually delivery. A tree stump that expects you will sit and is therefore never damp. The forest is full of gifts wrapped like ordinary things. Every neighbor has a rule, and each rule is simple and similar. Ask, don't grab, listen, don't hunt. Look twice, and if you still don't know, look kindly. When you follow these, the woods widen, paths unbraid. The air tastes more like mint and less like dust. Time behaves itself. You do not get lost because the forest refuses to lose you. If you walk home during the second twilight, the hour that feels like the day thinking of its best memory, you may notice the way the path lifts at the toes, making walking easier, the way a friend pushes the swing exactly as high as you want, and not an inch higher. The creatures settle into their versions of evening, heads tucked, wings folded, songs put away for tomorrow. You carry their calm with you. It fits in a pocket. It does not jingle. It is the opposite of heavy. We'll stop by the shack again, not for the shows in the front room, but for the shelves in the back, where objects live that have more stories than labels, and where holding something for a breath teaches you how to hold the day a little better too. If your breath is slow, keep it slow. If your eyelids are brave enough to close, let them. The objects will be here when you wake. In a glass case under a lamp that makes everything look convincingly itself, a compass sits, with its needle making the smallest motions. It does not point north. It points toward home, your version, not anyone else's. And when you hold it, the needle rests for a heartbeat and then turns, with exquisite politeness, to the place where your quiet is currently stored. Sometimes that is a porch. Sometimes that is a voice. Sometimes it is a plan you have not written yet. The compass does not rush you. It will wait until you are ready to understand the direction it is offering. A drawer in a cabinet near the floor holds a collection of lucky coins. None are rare. All are useful. If you borrow one, the day it rides in your pocket learns what it means to arrange itself so that small things go right. The good pen is near the phone. The cat chooses your lap when you finally sit. The kettle sings just as you remember you wanted tea. When you return the coin, it feels slightly warmer than when you took it. Luck likes being carried and returned. On a shelf with a sign that reads, "Please touch carefully," there is a lantern with a wick that never quite burns down and never quite needs trimming. When lit, it produces a light that behaves as if it has been taught manners. Bright enough to see by, soft enough to be forgiven. People borrow it for late walks, for power outages, for storms that sound worse than they are. When the lantern is in use, the shack's front room looks a little dimmer, but somehow cozier, like a house that understands sharing. A jar sits near the register, filled with paper slips that look like the leftovers of a busy day. IOUs, people assume. They are right. But the debts they record are all kindnesses owed forward. For the ride to the clinic, pay to the next person who needs one. For the extra pie slice, give someone your seat. For the fixed hinge, listen to the bell. The slips are signed by no one and everyone. Stan calls it bookkeeping of the heart and pretends to dislike the phrase. He does not dislike it. In a box labeled "Found Maps," emotional. Folded pages await hands that need them. These maps do not show roads. They show routes like, from nervous to okay if you have 10 minutes. From overwhelmed to one small task. From I think I ruined it to it can still be fixed. And from alone to alone for now. The symbols in the legends are simple. A chair means sit. A cup means drink water. A shoe means walk once around the block. An envelope means write 2 honest sentences and stop. People borrow these maps, crease them, tuck them in wallets, forget them in jacket pockets, and rediscover them exactly when a different problem appears. Maps feel proud of being useful twice. On a pegboard, a magnifying lens hangs from a braided cord. It is heavy and clear and honest. When you hold it over text, the words enlarge without becoming distorted. When you hold it over a face, you see what is kind there without worship or denial. It is a tool for noticing. Ford made it on a quiet day when the rain asked him for company, not miracles. He left it downstairs because the front room needs honesty as much as the basement does. There is a music box whose song you will swear you've never heard before, and will also swear you have always known. Wind it, and it plays the shape of a memory you want to keep but don't want to wear out by thinking about it too hard. People bring it to hospital rooms, to porches, to desks where work has stacked itself up like a nervous animal. The music reminds you that days have spines and also soft parts, and that the soft parts are often the ones that help you stand. Under a cloth on a low table is a mirror that refuses to show you anything you are not ready to hold. If you are tired, it shows you asleep and untroubled. If you are angry, it shows you after you've walked and eaten and told the truth to someone who can hear it. If you are happy, it shows you happy and fine not to take a picture. The mirror is not magic in the splashy sense. It is protective. In a town that respects boundaries, this is one more way of saying yes without letting go of yourself. On the highest shelf, a bowl holds buttons, none match. Each button has a history that does not need to be cataloged to be honored. People dig through and find the one that makes a jacket whole again, the one that makes a backpack smile, the one that becomes the center of a new sweater because the old sweater had to be let go. Mabel replenishes this bowl with generosity. She says buttons are proof that small circles can keep large plans together. Behind the vending machine, beyond the door that knows more than it says, other objects live. The ones that belong to nights that become stories when you tell them with gentle edges. Their rules are strict and kind. Touch with permission. Label clearly, including feelings. Store in breathable boxes. Check on them yearly because even objects that are done being dangerous appreciate being remembered as complicated. Not every item in the shack is unusual. Many are plain and proud of it. A well-balanced broom that makes sweeping feel like dancing. A bell whose note loosens the day's last knot. A stack of postcards that look ordinary until you write the first line. After that, they look like exactly what you meant. Curiosity is not always about mystery. It is often about attention. The front room teaches this without pointing at it. You feel better after standing among things that have been chosen on purpose. If after your visit you find your own pockets holding small, useful objects, a rubber band, a smooth stone, a pen that actually works, consider it a loan from the shack's philosophy. Objects are companions. They can make a day gentler. They can remind you of your own capacity to be sturdy and kind. When they break, they ask you to practice mending. When they go missing, they invite you to forgive. When they are found again, they give you back a little piece of the person you were when you first held them. We can turn down the lamp now if you like. The last object for tonight is not on any shelf. It is a door you have stood beside in your own life. A door between waking and sleep. When it opens, it does so as softly as a page turning, and beyond it are dreams that behave themselves in dimensions that mind their manners. Another breath. Long in, longer out. Let's go there gently. Sleep is a door that speaks in the voice of your favorite teacher. Clear, kind, certain you can learn this. When you step through, the hallway on the other side stretches exactly as far as you need it to. The lights are low and warm. The floorboards are soft and confident. Dreams live in rooms off this hallway, doors ajar, lamps on, a plate of cookies set where anyone passing can take one without having to explain why. In the first room, the sky is closer than usual. Constellations hang like mobiles, gently turning, never tangling. You lie down on a rug that smells faintly of clean books and summer windowsills. The stars above you draw lines between themselves, but only when you look away, so the game never ends and never gets frustrating. Notes appear in the margins of the sky in tidy handwriting. You have time. You can rest. The answer doesn't mind waiting. In the second room, the lake from earlier has chosen to be indoors. Its surface is small, more like a reflection than a body of water, and it has set itself in a wide bowl on a table. When you lean over it, the bowl shows you not what happened or what might happen, but how you will feel okay either way. It is a specialized talent. The water is very proud of it. If a worry appears, the lake makes a copy so perfect and tiny that you can blow it away like a birthday candle flame. The original worry notices and decides it is smaller than it thought. Farther down the hall, a door stands that looks ordinary except for the way it seems to prefer being opened slowly. This is the door to other rooms that are also this room. Places that are not here but feel like here if you walk with care. Dimensions, some call them. libraries of alternate maybes. You do not need a passport. You need only the kind of curiosity that knows when to pause. When you step through, the air holds your hand. The floor tells your feet where the edges are. The walls are generous with their space. Nothing pushes. Nothing pulls. You are a guest, and the house is proud to host you. Once Ford built a larger door, a complicated one, that shone with blue and sang in a voice that made your shoulders lift without permission. It taught the town and Ford many things. The most important was not how far a person can go, but how dear it is to come back. In dreams, that lesson is practiced without danger. You travel to a room where you are braver, and you bring back a cup of that bravery and set it by your bed. You stroll into a version of the forest where every path has labels, and you borrow one of those labels to stick on your own decision. You drift into a kitchen where someone says, "It's okay to be tired," and you carry that sentence home in your pocket and spend it freely all day. There is a room where puzzles solve themselves only after you stop staring. Dipper loves this room. A chalkboard fills and erases and fills again while he leans back and lets his breath match the rhythm. In as the chalk writes, out as the eraser sighs. When the board finally settles on a clean, simple diagram, he nods. The diagram nods back. They do not rush to tell anyone. Knowing can be quiet, too. Another room projects sweater patterns onto the walls in slow, comforting loops, while a small radio plays a song that sounds like Glitter Landing. Mabel leaves with a new idea every time, and also with the profound permission not to make it tonight. Creativity, the room reminds her, keeps. It has a wide pantry. If a trickster sometimes visits, thin as a thought you didn't need, gold as a coin you forgot you had, the hallway knows how to be polite without being impressed. It says, "We are telling gentle stories here," and the trickster's angles soften. Riddles lower their voices. Jokes lose their sharp elbows and keep their good timing. Mischief remembers it is a cute cousin of joy and behaves accordingly. All the while, the town breathes in the same cadence. The pines outside the window sway, and your dream copies their motion because copying is a kind of learning. Dimensions drift past like ships far out on a well-marked sea. You could sail to them. You don't have to. It is enough to know the harbor lights will still be burning when you open your eyes. When dreams are done, they tidy themselves. They stack chairs, put away paints, rinse mugs, label boxes, leave notes. For Thursday, you open on a brave day, give to a friend who asks. They do not vanish. They wait in an upstairs closet with the door cracked, so the hallway light spills in. If you wake at 2 a.m., thirsty or thinking, you can pad down the hall in your socks and peek in. The dreams lift their heads, not offended at being interrupted, and say, "Need anything?" Sometimes you say, "Just a little quiet," and they pour it into a cup with a handle shaped like a moon. You return to bed. The compass on the nightstand, if you borrowed it, has stopped pointing because it has arrived. The lantern, if you lit it, glows as if it were proud to have helped, but is equally proud to take a rest. The mirror under the cloth has nothing to do because you are already exactly the person you can be at this hour. A sleeper, a listener, a traveler who went nowhere and everywhere and returned on time to the warm dent in the pillow. There will be days ahead for maps and steps and notes and pie and questions and sweaters and the precise, useful bravery of telling the truth kindly. There will be nights ahead for stars and lakes and doors and rooms and music boxes and the soft applause of moths. For now, the chapter has placed its period where it belongs. Tomorrow has its capital letter ready. If you want to stay, stay. If you want to drift, drift. If you want to turn the page with me later, I'll be here. On the porch, maybe. Counting lanterns, listening to the bell practice its polite ringing, writing a small label for a new shelf. Sleep, returned in good condition. Breathe in, slow, easy. Breathe out, slower, easier. The pines are whispering goodnight again, and the town is answering, and your heart, without having to think about it, is keeping time. The day chooses to be perfect without bragging about it. Sun that feels like a hand on your shoulder. Breezes that know the exact speed of a kite. Clouds that are more suggestion than rule. By late afternoon, the town is already humming at a softer pitch, like a choir warming up under their breath. Someone strings lanterns between the branches that lean over the square. Someone else lays out tablecloths that have seen a dozen summers and never once complained about a stain that it wouldn't leave. The bell rope gets a quick check and a friendly pat. It answers with a small, contented thunk. This is the night the town calls the Festival of Light. No one remembers when it started. Everyone remembers why. It is for the summer that just was, and for all the summers before that, and for the soft promise that a few good things will follow you into autumn and not mind the chill. It is not loud. It is not grand. It is inevitable in the best way. Like the feeling of finding your place at a table and noticing someone saved you the chair you like best. Preparation looks like simple kindnesses stretched across a square. Suze hammers a nail and stops before the wood gets irritated. Wendy slides a crate into the shade where tired feet will discover it and turn it into a bench. The florist tucks sprigs of something green along the edges of the stage, just enough to make everything smell like a friendly hillside. The librarian brings a small stack of books with ribbons as placeholders, stories that pair well with dusk. Old Man McGucket arrives with a handful of little glass floats rescued from a life of rolling under docks. He sets them in a bowl of water near the punch and tells them to behave. They do. There is a table for making lanterns. Children cut circles from thin paper that glows when a candle thinks about being born. Parents snip and glue and tie and say, yes, that shape is perfect, because it is. Someone draws a star that looks like a star. Someone else draws a star that looks like a potato with aspirations. Both will sail tonight. Names are written small. Wishes are written smaller. The wishes are ordinary and therefore powerful. A good first day. A call returned. A loose tooth that stops wobbling at a convenient time. The courage to ask. The grace to wait. The sun slides down the side of the day as if it were a hill, and at the bottom of that hill, the bell rings once, the way it does when it wants everyone to breathe at the same time. They do. The square becomes a circle, and the circle becomes a blanket that tucks its corners under the shoes of everyone gathered. Stan steps forward. He has practiced not practicing a speech. Welcome, he said, and the word carries more than it weighs. Thanks for showing up, he adds, and the lanterns wink like they know exactly how much showing up counts. He nods toward the lake where the pier looks patient and pleased with itself. Let's go tuck the summer in. They walk without hurry, the way you walk when there's no need to save steps. The path is a string of little conversations. I like your lantern. I like your ribbon. Is that peach pie? It was. Laughter ebbs and flows like a tide that knows the shoreline by heart. At the shore, the lake is already holding its breath in that friendly way lakes do before a good story begins. The flotilla starts small, one lantern, then two. Gentle hands lower the paper circles, the folded boats, the tiny houses with delicate roofs. Each candle is coaxed rather than lit. The flames catch as if they've been here before and are glad to be back. A breeze arrives, curious, peeks at the plan and nods. The lanterns drift outward, at first in a line, then in a scatter that looks like a map to somewhere worth visiting, but not yet. The water accepts them with a whisper. The ears hear, and the chest understands. This is the part where time agrees to be wide. A hush spreads to the furthest cattails. The lanterns open their small mouths of light and sing the quietest song, one note per candle, all the notes kind. If you look up, the stars are doing a very similar thing, but with older voices. If you look down, the water turns the song into handwriting that no one will ever need to decipher to feel better. Children keep their voices low without being asked. Dogs tilt their heads once and then lie down like professionals. People whisper thank you to the summer in the ways they know how. Dipper thinks them in complete sentences, numbered in a corner of his mind. Mabel counts them on her fingers until she runs out and starts over and doesn't mind. Stan keeps his hands in his pockets where a marble and a key disagree about who gets to be remembered first. Ford stands with his weight on his heels the way he does when he is trying to be casual and not quite pulling it off, and he smiles at the angles the lanterns make as they consult the water about where to go next. Sue says cool on 3 different notes, one for the water, one for the light, one for the company. Wendy leans in a way that could write a poem if it wanted to. McGucket hums harmony secretly and pretends not to. The bell rings once more, softer than before, not to announce, but to confirm. Yes, this is happening. Yes, you're here. Yes, that's enough. Someone starts a very small round of applause for no one in particular. It spreads, then fades, then leaves behind a feeling like warm bread. There is a moment. There is always a moment. When a breeze organizes the lanterns into a shape that looks like an answer you didn't know you wanted. Tonight the shape is a curve that turns into an opening that turns into a path. It points toward the cedar that bows to travelers. It points toward the far shore where owls keep office hours. It points toward tomorrow. The curve holds steady for one long, satisfied breath. Then the lanterns scatter back into friendly disarray. The answer didn't need to last to be true. Pie happens. Laughter returns to its comfortable volume. The radio plays a slow song that remembers every porch it has ever visited. The children run that gentle kind of running where no one will fall. A cricket tries a solo. The frogs lay down a bass line. The pines at a high, soft ah. The night stands up to its full height, which is tall but never intimidating, and drapes itself around the shoulders of the town. When the last of the lanterns go dim, not from drowning, but from resting, the lake lifts a little cool up to the dock as if to say, your turn, go home, tuck in, thank you for letting me carry those lights for a while. People wave goodnight to water. The water waves back in ripples that reach the shore and stop with good manners. The festival of light is not over when it ends. It continues as a memory that glows without needing batteries. It moves into pockets and onto mantles and into the way you hold a door the next morning. The town will sleep well, so will you. There is still a goodbye to say, but not the kind that breaks things. The kind that knows where the hinge is and how to close gently. Breathe in, breathe out. Follow the lanterns in your mind back up the path. They are small suns you can carry and set down and carry again. They know the way. Farewell mornings arrive like good librarians, on time with soft shoes. The attic knows before anyone speaks. It wraps the beds in a quiet that means business and comfort at once. Suitcases open their mouths and wait. Shirts fold themselves better when Mabel is humming. Dipper's notebook slides into the side pocket with the practiced ease of a book that has learned to travel. A pencil, blunt from use, agrees to one more day of service before it visits the sharpener at home. Downstairs, the kettle knows the assignment. It boils without fuss and whistles like a friend, not a referee. Stan pours 2 mugs that look larger in his hands than they do on the shelf. He sets them on the table and doesn't say anything wise because wisdom, this morning, is a table with 2 mugs and enough quiet between them. Ford adds a plate of toast because toast is what times like this ask for. Saus checks the bus schedule without looking at it. Wendy stands at the door and pretends to time the breeze, as if she'll need to report later that the air was moving at a rate measurable as, "We can do this." Goodbyes begin in pieces you can hold. A sweater folded with a laugh tucked inside for the moment, when the laugh will be needed and no one will be around to provide it fresh. A cap tilted just so, with the brim carrying a new smudge of summer that will not wash out and should not. A hug that is not fierce and is not reluctant. A hug that knows practice and keeps its promises. One last loop around the shack, hands brushing objects with thank yous that leave no fingerprints and also leave the best kind. Outside, the truck coughs awake and agrees to carry luggage with dignity. The porch counts steps, as if counting helped, and sometimes it does. The bell above the door gives a soft, accidental hum, and then pretends innocence. The trees arrange their shadows to make the path look like a welcome mat and not a runway. The town chooses its pace. It will not be late. It will not be early. It will be exactly on time when goodbye becomes see you. They walk through the square, the 4 of them, and it looks a little like a photograph that is not quite posed but will live in someone's pocket long enough to crease. People wave and mean it. The florist lifts a single bloom in a salute. The librarian holds up a book with a ribbon and mouths, "For later." The diner sets a paper bag on the counter with a note. "For the bus." The note under the note reads, "There are 2 napkins. Even comfort has logistics." At the stop, the bench has already warmed itself as if it showed up early to get a seat for them. The bus is not yet here, which is the bus doing its part, giving this moment space. Seuss checks his phone, then doesn't. Wendy kicks the toe of her boot into the dust and draws a small comet that points nowhere and everywhere. Stan clears his throat, then changes his mind, then clears it again. Ford looks at the sky like a person who has learned to read weather and feelings interchangeably. When the bus arrives, its brakes sigh in that way that makes everyone think the bus sympathizes. Maybe it does. People climb aboard with the cheerfulness that is requested. The driver nods like a priest of roads. Hands find handrails. Feet find aisle bounds. There are hugs that are shorter than some hearts want, and exactly the right length for others. There are sentences that do not need nouns. You'll be, and you'll, we will. Mabel goes first because she knows it will be easier for Dipper if she clears the air with joy. She bounces, but softly. She turns, but slowly. She waves, but with both hands because one hand never seemed like enough for her feelings. "See you when sweaters need reinforcements," she says. "See you when jokes need emergency glitter." The town laughs with its eyes. Dipper steps up and pauses with one foot on the stair because he learned from last summer how to stand at the edge of a thing without falling in. He looks at the shack. He looks at the lake. He looks at the space above the square where, if you stare long enough, you can almost see the lanterns from last night lingering on the air. He doesn't say he'll write. He will. He doesn't say he'll return. He will try. He just says, "Thank you," to everything at once, and everything at once hears him. The doors close with a softness that was not standard when the bus was built, but has developed over years of watching people leave other towns. The engine gathers itself like a cat about to curl, then changes its mind and rolls instead. The bus pulls away. People wave until waving feels like a blessing rather than a signal. Then hands fall to sides. Then hands find pockets. Then hands learn to be still with grace. Stan and Ford stand a beat longer, shoulder to shoulder in a way that once would have felt like coincidence and now feels like design. They do not speak until the bus is a small, friendly rectangle at the end of the road. "Well," Stan says. "Well," Ford says. The word holds 100 meanings. One of them is pride, one is relief. One is the knowledge that love is work, and work can be love, and both can be rest if you let them. There is a second farewell to say, but it happens at the dock. The boat waits with ropes coiled in patient spirals. The lake remembers their names and spells them on the surface in cursive that only the people who need to can read. Supplies have been packed like a poem. Spare parts, spare socks, spare jokes. A map is pinned under a mug that says "World's Okayest Navigator." The motor is tuned to a frequency that sounds like conversation. Suze hands over a ring of keys and then, because he is Suze, hands over a second ring of keys that doesn't fit anything but will be good to jingle on long afternoons. Wendy passes along a small tin of mints labeled "For When the Wind is Too Quiet." The librarian tucks a book into a dry bag. Tales to tell a sea that thinks it's seen everything. McGucket thumps the hull and mutters a blessing that, translated, means, "May the screws stay honest." Stan unties one rope. Ford unties the other. The boat sighs a little in the way boats do when they are happy. The brothers climb aboard without ceremony and without stumbling. They wear hats that do not match and will never match. The hats nod to each other amiably. The first push away from the dock is the kind you remember, with your forearms for an hour and your heart for longer. They do not go far. Not yet. They circle once so the town can see the boat from every angle and be satisfied that it looks as ready from the east as it does from the west. Stan salutes with 2 fingers. Ford raises a thermos. The crowd on the dock answers with the sound a town makes when it is proud and a little lonely and absolutely fine. Then the boat points its polite nose toward the part of the lake that becomes river, that becomes "We'll send a postcard." The wake unrolls behind them, a ribbon that ties the dock to the boat, the town to the water, the summer just finished to the years yet to be named. The ribbon lays flat and disappears where it should. The boat grows smaller but not less itself. The brothers become silhouettes, then dots, then a story being told by the pines to the shore as night begins to gather its materials. Seuss flips the sign on the shack to "Close for now," and underneath, in smaller letters, "Back soon enough." He tries out the bell above the door and nods at the note. He walks through the rooms and says the names of things out loud, not to claim them, just to greet them. Wendy takes the first shift on the porch where the chair rocks because it feels like it. The town exhales into the kind of afternoon that knows how to hold what just happened without setting it down too quickly. Farewells are not exits here. They are openings you walk through and then look back and examine the edges of because the craftsmanship is so good. The twins are on their way. The brothers are on the water. The shack is in reliable hands. The town is itself. The lake keeps the light. The pines keep the watch. The bell will ring when it's the hour to ring. The rest will be waiting where you left it, which is to say, not behind you, around you. Night arrives to take the next shift. It is ready. If your eyes are heavy, let them close. If your breath has slowed, that is the rhythm we were aiming for. There is one more chapter, a short one. The part where the lamps dim and the narrator steps back. and the town tucks itself in and leaves the porch light on for anyone, including you, who might be passing by. One more inhale. One more long, gentle exhale. The lanterns are in their boxes. The water remembers. The road knows your name, whether you stay or go. The square is a sketch in a pencil now. Lines of benches, an outline of the stage, a loose halo where the bell glows through its tower slats. The shops pull their shades down like eyelids. The diner stacks its chairs with the practiced grace of a bedtime story putting itself back on the shelf. The library breathes in and out and in again. The post office sorts the last 2 envelopes and tells the rest of the letters. Tomorrow, they agree. Up on the hill, the pines make their old, good music. Not a song you have to remember, a rhythm you can fall into without learning. The needles talk to the wind. The trunks speak to the ground. The roots send quiet messages underfoot. Here, here, here. A moth taps a window and decides even lights need sleep. The lake collects the day's last reflections and lays them flat, smoothing with the palm of the dark. In the shack, the front room has gone soft around the edges. The exhibits hold their poses the way patient actors do when the curtain drops and the chairs go empty. The compass is still, its needle at peace because home has been achieved for the night. The music box keeps its lid down. The mirror rests under its cloth. The jar of IOUs glows faintly with promises that are fine, waiting their turn. The vending machine hums a lullaby. The door behind it listens, as even doors must, and chooses to keep its dreams to itself. Seuss locks the front and tests the handle once, then once more, because care is a habit he wears well. He turns off one lamp and leaves another. The left-behind light makes a small island where it lands, the tip of the counter, the edge of a flyer that reads, Story Hour Thursday, the corner of a photo frame. That island is enough to steer by if someone comes late. Enough to reassure the building that it has company. Enough to reassure you, should you be passing and glance through the glass, that the night remembers your face. Wendy crosses the porch, pauses with her hand on the rail, and looks out over the square. She has the gift of seeing the whole and the details at once. She spots a ribbon, loosened by evening, and ties it again without comment. She tucks a note into the doorframe for the morning. Leave early, chase shade. It will help. She steps down, and the boards do not creak, because they never creak for those who know where the grain is gentlest. On the lake, the water takes a temperature only lakes can measure and is satisfied. The boat that left earlier is somewhere honest on the map, and the waves that remain here are pillows. The pier keeps watch like a lighthouse lying down. The lantern poles stand straight, bare now but not lonely. They have a memory of glow that will last them until next time. In the attic, 2 beds hold the shapes of the people they fit best. Blankets are smooth. Pillows remember. The air smells like graphite and fabric softener and August. A pine cone sits on the sill and pretends it is only a pine cone. The fan spins the room into a low circle and then another. It does not need to move fast. It understands that steady is the speed of sleep. Farther out, where the road eases past the last mailbox and becomes a line between fields, the bus is a dim aquarium of light. Inside, heads lean against windows and shoulders find comfortable angles. Voices are rare and small. A book closes. A text is sent. A thought is held and then put down carefully the way a mug is placed on a coaster. The driver watches the white lines appear and vanish and appear, a magic trick that never wears out. The bus sighs as it climbs and sighs again as it coasts. It is doing a good job. And you, wherever you are in this, are welcome to set the day down now. Your breath can be the town's breath for a little while. In through the pines, out across the lake. In through the window, out past the porch, in through the square, out to the quiet road. Nothing is chasing you. Nothing is in a hurry. The mysteries are friendly and already know tomorrow's answers. They will hold them for you until morning. If you'd like a final image to carry into sleep, take this one. The night scene from the shack's window. Lanterns packed away. Bell tower a silhouette. The sky a soft field dotted with careful stars. In the middle of the window, a single lamp left on purpose spills a circle of gold across the floorboards. Dust motes drift like lazy snow. Somewhere within that circle sits a small, ordinary object. A button, a marble, a note. It belongs to someone who will find it in the morning and smile and tuck it into a pocket and face the day better for having found it. The pines breathe. The town sleeps. The brothers at sea dream of a wind that knows all the old routes and a shore that is patient. The twins on the road dream of doors that open and rooms that feel like attics, even when they are not. The lamp glows. The lamp grows tired. The lamp rests. Sleep now. Gravity Falls is keeping the light for you. When your eyes open, there will be coffee that knows when to beep, and paths that remember your feet, and neighbors whose names you don't have to rush to recall because they are the kind who wave first. The mysteries will still be mysterious, but they will not be less kind for it. The bell will ring when it is time to begin again.